44 years ago, a young woman in San Diego vanished without a trace, after leaving home to meet her estranged husband, abandoning her car on the roadside, and a young child who would never be picked up by his mother again. Authorities suspected the husband, a serviceman stationed at Miramar base, was involved, but with no body found and virtually no leads to pursue, the investigation eventually fell silent. Yet, through all those years, a female lieutenant in the San Diego PD's cold case unit refused to let go, believing that somewhere in the dusty evidence lay the answer. Then one day, while re-examining old DNA samples, she uncovered a detail that seemed meaningless, but was enough to turn the entire investigation around and shock the entire community. Before diving deep into this chilling story, let us know where you're watching from, and if you love cases solved after decades of silence, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episodes. July 1981, the Claremont Mesa neighborhood in San Diego was steeped in the stifling atmosphere of a Southern California summer. Rows of single-story homes with red-tiled roofs stood close together, low wooden fences, lawns withered from the intense sun. In a small apartment at the end of Bannock Avenue, Tiffany Mee, 22 years old, was getting ready to go out. She worked as a receptionist at the Catamaran Resort Hotel, had recently moved back in with her parents after separating from her husband Chris Mann, a serviceman at the Miramar Naval Air Station. Lately, she had seemed anxious, spoke little, sometimes staring out the window as if weighing something. That evening, Tiffany wore a thin sweater, carried her 2-year-old son, and told her mother she was meeting Chris to finalize the divorce and child custody agreement. Her mother advised putting it off until next week, but Tiffany said she just wanted to talk soon to rearrange her life. She left the house at dusk, carrying a small purse and a few of the child's things, quickly walking to the green Ford Pinto parked out front. An elderly neighbor named Louise Franklin, who was watering plants in her yard, later recalled seeing Tiffany wave goodbye, start the engine, and turn toward La Jolla. After that, no one saw her return. That night, the neighborhood remained quiet as usual. No one heard strange noises or any signs that something unusual had happened. Tiffany's parents went to bed late, thinking their daughter would return after talking. But by midnight, the familiar car was still not in the driveway. The next morning, her mother called the hotel and learned Tiffany hadn't shown up for her morning shift and hadn't called in sick. Her personal phone went unanswered, and her bedroom still had all her daily items intact. Her young son was also not at home. The family panicked, splitting up to drive around La Jolla, Mission Bay, and downtown areas where Tiffany often went. But it was all in vain. They asked her close friends. No one had seen her or heard her mention going anywhere far. By afternoon, her father informed relatives and neighbors, and also contacted local hospitals, gas stations and motels in the area to inquire. But no place had any record of a young woman named Tiffany Mee. As dusk fell, the small house became heavy with silence. A sense of unease spread throughout the family. Finally, around early evening, Tiffany's father brought a silver-framed photo of his daughter to the San Diego PD station to report her missing. In the statement, he wrote clearly, "My daughter left home last night to meet her husband and has not returned. No one knows where she went." That statement was the first milestone in a disappearance no one expected would haunt the town for many years to come. At San Diego Police Headquarters, the missing person report was filed early the next morning. The case was coded MB 81-723 with an initial classification of missing adult, suspicious circumstances. Sergeant David Cole from the Missing Persons Unit was the first assigned to handle it. He met Tiffany's parents in the second-floor public reception room, where they brought a photo of her in her hotel uniform and a copy of the green Ford Pinto's registration. In their statements, the mother recounted the exact time her daughter left, the clothes she wore, and her plan to meet her husband Chris Mann in the La Jolla area. Tiffany's father said he had called Chris that morning, but only got a short reply. "I don't know, she left after talking to me." Police noted this in the last known contact section. Per procedure, Cole immediately contacted city hospitals, Sharp Memorial, Mercy Hospital, Scripps La Jolla, but none had any female patients matching the description. He also called the California Highway Patrol office to ask about traffic accidents in the area the previous night, but the list had no incidents involving a young woman or a Ford Pinto. Afterward, police sent notices to gas stations and motels around La Jolla and Mission Bay, requesting they check transaction logs, but there were no notable records. Meanwhile, in Claremont Mesa, 2 local officers went door to door to verify statements. Louise Franklin, the last person to see Tiffany, repeated that she left in the evening looking normal, with no signs of worry or hurry. Another person across the street said they heard the car start, then silence after it turned off the main road. Those scant details were included in the initial report. That afternoon, the Missing Persons Unit issued an internal bulletin to the entire department, requesting patrol units to watch for the green Ford Pinto with California license plate 524 EXM. Registered to Tiffany Me, 22 years old, 5'4", light brown hair, gray-blue eyes. The bulletin also emphasized that she was with her young son, about 2 years old, and might be heading north or around the La Jolla area. A copy was sent to the Border Patrol and neighboring county police offices for coordination. That evening, Sergeant Cole returned to the Me family home to gather more information. He asked about habits, friends, co-workers, and the possibility that Tiffany might have left voluntarily. Her mother insisted her daughter had no reason to run away, no debts, no new romantic relationships. Her hotel salary was enough to cover her life, and she was applying to re-enroll in community college that fall. Her father added that Tiffany had expressed a desire to finalize the divorce and gain custody of the child, showing she had clear plans, not someone intending to disappear. Cole noted, no signs of psychological distress, no economic or social reasons for voluntary departure. A copy of the statement was sent to the county prosecutor's office. That night, patrol units were still instructed to check along the route between Claremont Mesa and La Jolla. Some night shift officers noted several cars parked unusually long on Morena Boulevard, but none matched the plate they were looking for. Internally, the disappearance was rated medium alert level, meaning no evidence of crime yet, but circumstances unusual enough to keep the investigation open. The next day, another team of investigators contacted the hotel where Tiffany worked. The manager confirmed she didn't show up, didn't call in sick, and had no unusual behavior in her previous shift. A coworker said Tiffany had confided that she wanted to resolve everything soon to have peace of mind, but didn't specify what. Police compiled a contact list of all relatives, friends, coworkers, and acquaintances of Tiffany, totaling 13 people, including 3 who knew Chris Mann. Interviews were scheduled for the following days. As the first week passed without new information, Sergeant Cole recommended upgrading the alert to high-risk missing person, allowing expansion of the search beyond the city. A document was sent to the Federal Coordination Unit, requesting data sharing on recent missing women cases for comparison. However, at that time, investigations relied entirely on phones, faxes, and paper records, so the communication process was slow. The May family kept calling the department for updates, but always got the same answer. "We are still searching." Every evening, Tiffany's father still drove the roads around La Jolla, hoping to spot a small sign, the familiar car, or any clue leading to his daughter. In the San Diego PD office, Tiffany's photo was clipped into a file less than 3 pages thick, but it had opened a case that many investigators would remember for most of their careers: a disappearance with no reason, no witnesses, no trace. 2 days after the Mez family reported Tiffany missing, around early afternoon, a patrol unit in northern San Diego discovered a green Ford Pinto parked motionless on the shoulder of Morena Boulevard, about 4 miles from the Claremont Mesa neighborhood. The car was angled on the side road, front wheels slightly into the grassy edge, with no one inside or around it. The patrol officer stopped to check, confirming the plate matched the information in the internal bulletin issued 2 days earlier. Immediately, the area was temporarily cordoned off, and a support unit was dispatched to ensure the scene wasn't disturbed. Traffic on Miramar Boulevard continued to flow, but a strip of caution tape was stretched around the car to prevent curious onlookers from stopping. Police noted that the car was locked, but not dead-bolted. All windows closed, headlights off, gas tank nearly full. There were no major scratches or signs of collision on the body, tires not flat, indicating the vehicle was in normal operating condition when stopped. An officer opened the door with a spare key provided by the family and did a quick check inside. No people, no signs of struggle, no scattered items. Everything seemed neatly arranged, giving the impression that the driver left intentionally rather than being forced out in panic. Under the early afternoon sun, the interior faintly smelled of heated upholstery, no gas or cigarette odor. An old magazine lay in the door pocket, a few loose notepapers, and a broken pencil. The officer recorded every detail in the initial report. No key in the ignition, and none found dropped nearby. Police temporarily assumed the key was taken by the user. To follow procedure, the car was sealed on site, awaiting the forensics team to process it per standard protocol. When Sergeant David Cole arrived, he directed photographing the entire scene, determining the car's position relative to road markers and nearby objects. The distance to the nearest intersection was measured and recorded. He then checked under the chassis for signs of dragging or skidding, but found none. The grass around the area wasn't trampled, indicating the car hadn't been stopped there for too long. A few meters from the car was a small city power station, behind it, an iron fence, an empty lot. Cole asked two maintenance workers nearby. They said they hadn't seen anyone park that morning, only noticing the Ford when they arrived for their lunch shift. No one heard noises or saw anyone leave the car. One of them said they first saw the car around nearly 11 a.m., but thought it belonged to a local resident. All statements were recorded and signed. When the forensics team finished preliminary documentation, the car was towed to the police department's impound lot for more detailed examination. In the end-of-day report, Cole wrote clearly, "No clear signs of crime at the scene. Car stopped intentionally, doors not forced, no items missing." However, the fact that the missing person and her 2-year-old son hadn't appeared anywhere meant the case couldn't be considered voluntary abandonment. Cole requested re-sweeping the area within a 1-mile radius of the scene, including empty lots, drainage ditches, and nearby residences. Many officers were deployed on foot to check but found nothing. Along Miramar Boulevard, traffic was heavy and constant, making it unlikely someone could stop long without notice, though it didn't rule out the car being brought there after the disappearance. As evening fell, the car was thoroughly sealed, with Sergeant Cole's signed seal taped to the driver's door. A copy of the report was forwarded to the San Diego PD Criminal Investigation Division to take over the case. In a brief end-of-day meeting, investigators agreed on a preliminary assessment. The car was the only central piece of evidence so far, but not enough data to confirm a criminal act. They decided to maintain the suspicious missing file status and continue seeking other leads from sources around the scene. Miramar Boulevard returned to quiet after the car was removed, leaving only a faint oil stain on the asphalt and compressed grass under the tires, the last sign recording Tiffany Mee's presence in this place. The morning after Tiffany's Ford Pinto was found, police sent a summons for Chris Mann to come in for questioning at San Diego PD headquarters. He arrived on time, wearing a white shirt and khaki pants, calm demeanor, neatly groomed as if prepared for the meeting. Sergeant David Cole and another investigator handled the initial interrogation. To start, Cole informed him of the reason his wife Tiffany Mee was currently missing. Her car had been found abandoned on Miramar Boulevard. Chris showed no surprise, just nodded slightly, saying he had heard the news from his in-laws the previous evening. When asked about the evening Tiffany disappeared, Chris stated that she had called him around early evening to arrange a meeting near Lawada High School. According to him, the meeting lasted no more than 15 minutes. The two discussed the separation and child custody. No arguments occurred. Then Tiffany said she would go home. He insisted there was no conflict. and that she seemed stable. Cole asked him to describe the meeting location clearly. Chris said they parked in a lot near the park. He stood outside his car while she sat in hers. However, in the statement, the meeting time was noted as around 8 p.m., whereas according to the landline records from the Me home that police checked, the last call from Tiffany to Chris's number was made at 9:12 p.m. When questioned again, Chris appeared flustered, saying he might have remembered the time wrong because it was already dark. Police noted this minor inconsistency in the report. Continuing the session, Cole asked if Tiffany had brought their son. Chris replied yes, but added that the child slept in the car the entire time they talked. When Cole suggested that meeting like that late at night was unusual, Chris simply responded she wanted to finish it soon so she wouldn't have to think about it much. Throughout the statement-taking, he maintained an even tone, no highs or lows, no signs of emotion. Cole observed a small scratch on Chris's right hand near the wrist and asked about it. He said it was from scraping while fixing the garage door at his apartment. The wound looked fresh, not fully scabbed over. Cole noted this detail and requested it be photographed for the file. When asked where he went after the meeting, Chris said he returned to his apartment in Miramar and stayed there all night. He claimed he didn't go out, had no one with him, but refused to provide names of anyone who could confirm. According to him, the next morning he went to work as usual until hearing Tiffany hadn't returned. All statements were handwritten, and he signed each page to confirm. After the first session, Cole and his partner reviewed the report and noted several mismatches. While Chris said the meeting was short and normal, Tiffany's family stated the two had been in conflict for months, and she had expressed fear about meeting him alone. Additionally, in the personnel records at Miramar Base, Chris's shift that day ended at 6 p.m., leaving him free in the evening, but the next morning's time clock showed him arriving nearly 2 hours late. This small discrepancy was marked in red by Cole in his notebook. That afternoon, police inspected Chris's car in the apartment parking lot at Miramar. The car was unusually clean, interior freshly wiped, strong smell of cleaner. When asked, Chris said he always kept the car clean out of habit. No significant evidence was noted, but the investigator remarked on the overly fresh condition for a daily military worker's vehicle. The preliminary report sent to the Criminal Investigation Division concluded that Chris Mann's statement contained multiple inconsistencies, but not enough basis to confirm criminal activity. Meanwhile, local media began running short articles about the young woman's disappearance and the abandoned car, emphasizing that her husband was the last person to see the victim. Police cautiously released no details, only confirming they were continuing to verify statements from involved parties. In the second session, when asked again about his route leaving La Jolla, Chris stated he drove east via Balboa Avenue to go home. However, maps showed that route did not match a logical path from the alleged meeting point. When asked why he took the detour, he vaguely replied, "I'm used to that way." All data was recorded, but without independent witnesses or surveillance cameras, technology was limited at the time. Police could not verify. Ultimately, the file remained handled as a suspicious missing person case, not yet shifted to criminal investigation. Sergeant Cole wrote in the interrogation conclusion report, "Husband's statement needs further corroboration. Currently no clear charging elements. Continue monitoring." As he left the station, Chris Mann shook hands with each person, briefly saying he hoped Tiffany would be found soon, then quietly walked to the parking lot. Those present all remembered his demeanor, calm to the point where it was hard to tell if it was the composure of a disciplined serviceman or a way to hide something deeper. The discovery of the abandoned car on Morena Boulevard prompted San Diego PD to expand the search scale. The very next morning, Sergeant David Cole presented the plan in the criminal investigation room. The entire La Jolla, Mission Bay, and coastal routes would be thoroughly swept. The department mobilized nearly 40 personnel, along with 2 K-9 units trained for missing person searches. The local rescue bureau provided a helicopter for aerial observation, while volunteers from the San Diego Women's Association and University of California San Diego students joined searches along the beaches. The plan was divided into 3 zones: along Marina Boulevard, where the car was found, the La Jolla residential area, and the marshlands around Mission Bay. The forensics team set up a map of Tiffany's possible route based on the car's location and the time she left home. Accordingly, the distance from Claremont Mesa to the car was only a 10-minute drive, so the possibility of her being stopped or voluntarily pulling over in that short stretch was prioritized. On the first day, forces split into small groups, moving along side roads and connecting alleys, checking drainage ditches, empty lots, and roadside parks. The K-9 unit sniffed samples of Tiffany's clothing provided by the family, but the scent was erased by sea winds and time, yielding no positive results. The helicopter circled overhead, noting several scattered parked cars along the roads, but no suspicious signs. By day's end, nothing notable was found beyond a few old discarded items in trash bins. The first day report concluded, no evidence or biological traces related found. The next day, the search expanded south of Mission Bay. Police coordinated with water rescue forces to check water edges and private docks. Some fishermen stated they had seen a small green car pass through the area on the evening Tiffany disappeared, but couldn't recall the exact time or driver. The statements were recorded, but had no verification value. In the La Jolla residential area, officers went door-to-door inquiring. A woman living near the park where Chris said he met Tiffany recalled hearing a car engine start and then stop in the evening, but saw no one coming or going. These scattered details only thickened the file without narrowing the search. Police also did not rule out Tiffany leaving San Diego. Bus stations, Amtrak terminals, and the local airport were notified to check passenger lists, but no matches. Stores and gas stations in the area were asked about unusual cash transactions, but results were zero. Local media began daily articles calling for public information, detailing Tiffany's appearance and the young child. The police department's phone received dozens of calls daily, mostly false reports or guesses. One person said they saw a woman like Tiffany at Grossmont Shopping Center, but blurry security camera checks confirmed nothing. Another reported hearing a child crying in an empty abandoned car in Pacific Beach, but by the time police arrived, the car was gone. In the following days, police maintained coastal searches where tides rose and fell unpredictably. Rescue teams used rubber boats and grappling hooks to sweep deeper water areas, but still found no traces. Every hypothesis was raised then dismissed: kidnapping, accident, voluntary departure. None had enough evidence. On the map hanging in the investigation room, dozens of red dots marking checked locations covered the northern coastal area of the city. Sergeant Cole met with superiors, admitting the case lacked directional elements. Police had collected all possible statements, but no witness confirmed seeing Tiffany after she left home. Regarding Chris Mann, he was still called in for supplemental statements, but provided no new information. He affirmed he was cooperating and wanted the truth, but couldn't help further. Tiffany's family was at the station every day, hoping for good news. Her mother brought photos of her daughter and grandson, asking each duty officer. Police tried to reassure, but couldn't hide the deadlock. On the 10th day, the search plan shifted to sweeping farther areas, including routes out of the city. Temporary checkpoints were set up on Interstate 5 and Highway 52, but yielded no new information. At the same time, forensics continued examining the Ford Pinto in the impound lot, but by this point had no preliminary results. All hope still rested on finding physical traces at the scene, but time was passing quickly, chances diminishing daily. Into the second week, search forces began reducing personnel. Volunteers returned to daily jobs. The helicopter stopped flying to save costs. Sergeant Cole requested maintaining a core team to follow new tips. A brief meeting was held at the station on the 14th day. The compiled report was over 40 pages thick, listing 87 public calls, 15 areas checked, 6 potential witnesses, but none providing verifiable information. The conclusion stated, No whereabouts of Tiffany Mee or the accompanying child found. No clear signs of crime. Case remained suspicious missing. After the meeting ended, the wall map was taken down, replaced by a temporary report. Cole sat alone in the room, looking out the window at the foggy harbor. He knew the search efforts had reached their limit. After 2 weeks of continuous sweeping, not a single sign appeared, and the Tiffany Mee file gradually shifted from emergency status to an unsolved disappearance. After the official search operation ended without results, San Diego PD shifted focus to scrutinizing all of Tiffany Mee's personal relationships to determine if she might have left with someone or been influenced by an acquaintance. Sergeant David Cole was tasked with compiling a list of individuals who had regular contact with her in the 3 months prior to her disappearance. Based on her employment records at the Catamaran Resort Hotel, phone directory, and family statements, the initial list included 18 names, 12 coworkers, 2 old school friends, 1 close neighbor, and 3 relatives in the suburbs. Over 3 days, Cole and 2 investigating officers conducted interviews one by one. Most hotel coworkers described Tiffany as calm, punctual, and private about personal matters. She had no conflicts at work, showed no signs of depression, and never mentioned leaving San Diego. Another receptionist said that in her final week, Tiffany had remarked that everything would soon settle down and planned to reapply for school in the fall. The shift manager confirmed she had received full pay and had not quit. Preliminary conclusion: no indications of preparing to leave or abandon her job. In the Claremont Mesa neighborhood, the May family's neighbors provided similar information. They said Tiffany often took her son for afternoon walks, occasionally stopped at nearby stores, and exhibited no unusual behavior. One man living next door recalled that on the evening before she disappeared, she said she was going to meet Chris to talk one last time, in a calm tone with no signs of distress. All these statements were recorded by Cole, with the note, "No evidence Tiffany intended to voluntarily leave San Diego." When interviews moved to old friends, one high school friend of Tiffany provided a few new details. According to her, Tiffany had confided that her marriage to Chris Mann was gradually becoming unbearable, and she feared he got angry easily when challenged. However, the friend did not believe Tiffany feared physical harm. She described, "Tiffany said she just wanted to end it peacefully without arguing." Police noted this statement, marking it as potentially relevant. Next, Cole contacted Tiffany's mother to clarify the couple's relationship. She recounted that while Chris was stationed at Miramar, Tiffany often endured heated arguments over money and child rearing. She also said her daughter had complained about her husband's controlling behavior, sometimes tracking her work schedule and calling constantly to check on her. In one private conversation, Tiffany had mentioned Chris grabbing her arm too hard, leaving bruises, but she didn't want to report it for fear of affecting his military career. Cole asked if she knew of any new romantic relationship for her daughter. She denied it completely. The girl had no new boyfriend. She just wanted peace with the child. Police compiled all statements and identified a common thread. Tiffany had no reason to abandon the city, and no one saw her planning to travel. In the internal report submitted at the end of the week, Cole wrote, "No voluntary factors. High probability victim was influenced by acquaintance." This report led department leadership to direct the investigation toward intervention by acquaintance, specifically someone with close ties or last contact before disappearance. At the top of the list was Chris Mann. His file was requested from Miramar Base, including military service history, time cards, and residence address. Police confirmed he lived alone in a rented apartment near Balboa Avenue, with no cohabitants. His work schedule showed no special duties on the day Tiffany disappeared and 2 days off. Cole requested a second interview with Chris, primarily to verify consistency between his statements and information gathered from the victim's family. The session took place in a small interrogation room at the station, without a lawyer present. Cole asked more specific questions. "Can you recall the exact time you met Tiffany, what vehicle she arrived in, and which direction she left?" Chris repeated that the meeting was short. Tiffany looked normal and drove off herself. When asked why he didn't contact her the next day, he said he didn't want to bother her because he thought she needed time to think. The answer raised Cole's suspicion, as records showed Tiffany was the primary caregiver. Disappearing with the child was completely contrary to her habits. Police continued questioning about their post-separation relationship. Chris described them as still talking, sometimes arguing, but not seriously. When asked about past conflicts, he only said, "My wife was hot-tempered," avoiding details. All statements were recorded, copied, and added to the file. Internally, a small meeting was held among investigators to assess Chris's potential involvement. Officers agreed he was the last to see the victim, had marital conflicts, and had free time matching the disappearance. However, without physical evidence or independent witnesses, they could not request an arrest warrant. Cole's final compiled report stated, "Husband Chris Mann identified as primary person of interest. Currently no direct evidence for charges. Recommend continued monitoring." This report was forwarded to the Criminal Investigation Division, along with all statements and maps of parties' movements. From that point, the Tiffany Me file was marked yellow in the internal storage system, indicating high suspicion but insufficient evidence. For those involved in the investigation, the name began to represent a large question mark, surrounded by conflicting accounts and time gaps no one could fill. By the end of 1981, after nearly 5 months of investigation, the Tiffany Me missing person case was officially evaluated by the San Diego PD Criminal Investigation Division as no progress. The compiled report was nearly 80 pages thick, including all statements, search warrants, search maps, and preliminary forensic results. Throughout the investigation, police obtained no evidence of legal value, found no body, and had no direct witnesses confirming seeing Tiffany after she left home. All data remained at the suspicion level, insufficient to form grounds for criminal prosecution. Sergeant David Cole, case lead, wrote in the summary, "No criminal elements proven. Hypothesis of acquaintance intervention noted but unverified." In late December, an internal meeting was held to determine file status. Attendees included the investigation chief, prosecutor representative, and 3 directly involved officers. After reviewing all reports, they agreed the case had reached investigative limits under current conditions. Continuing without new leads would only waste resources. Official conclusion: Tiffany Me disappearance temporarily closed, archived under code MB 81-723, classified unresolved, missing adult. In the meeting minutes, the recommendation section clearly noted the file could be reopened upon new evidence or witnesses. A copy was sent to the county prosecutor's office for retention. The original went to the San Diego Police Department's Central Archive in National City. Evidence collected, including scene photos, statement copies, and O-blood-type forensic records, was sealed in a large evidence box, labeled per regulation, signed by Sergeant Cole and 2 forensic staff. On December 29, 1981, Cole signed the final entry in the case tracking log, confirming transfer to archive. In his personal note, he wrote briefly, "Nothing further to pursue." At the Me family home, the police notification arrived in early January the following year. The pre-printed letter, concise, stated Tiffany's disappearance remained unresolved and was now archived. Her parents read it multiple times, then filed it in a drawer with their daughter's personal papers. They still hoped the file would soon reopen, but received no further calls from police. For the agency, the case quickly joined hundreds of unsolved files from that decade, disappearances without evidence, traces, or leads. In 1982, Sergeant Cole's position was replaced by a younger officer, and the Missing Persons Unit underwent restructuring. Many old files were consolidated into general storage, retaining only basic data. File MB 81-723 was among them, bound with cloth tape, red ink number on the spine. In the statistical log, a brief note: no witnesses, no evidence, no body. Husband identified as last contact, insufficient grounds for charges. The case was removed from active investigation, meaning no officer was assigned daily follow-up. Monthly unit meetings no longer mentioned Tiffany Mee. For the administrative system, the file had been processed correctly and completed. For those directly involved, it was just one of many dead-end disappearances due to technical limits and lack of witnesses. After that point, Tiffany Mee's name gradually vanished from department internal bulletins, appearing only in year-end compilations of unresolved victims. In real life, her family occasionally contacted police, but received the same response: "We will retain your information." By early 1982, local media stopped coverage, and San Diego PD issued no further updates. In the archive log, the final line was written in blue ink, slightly slanted handwriting: "File transferred to archive status unresolved." That was the quiet period for an unsolved disappearance, closing a year of investigation, where all efforts stopped at the boundary between suspicion and silence. For more than 3 decades after File MB 81-723 was temporarily closed, Tiffany Mee's disappearance gradually faded into obscurity among hundreds of unresolved cases at the San Diego Police Department. The metal file cabinets in the Federal Boulevard storage warehouse still held stacks of dust-covered document boxes, labels faded over the years. Among them, the file labeled "Missing Adult, Suspicious Circumstances, Tiffany Mee" lay quietly, sealed with a faded cloth tie, never reopened. Tiffany's family, over the years, refused to accept that silence. Her parents, aging with time, sent letters annually requesting the police department review the case, hoping to resume investigation or at least receive new information. The letters reached multiple generations of police chiefs, but responses were always identical: no new data recorded. After 1990, Tiffany's mother began contacting missing person support organizations for advice on independent searches. She once posted flyers around La Jolla and Mission Bay, but over time, the papers faded, rain and sun erasing the image of her young daughter. By the late 1990s, they moved to Poway, still keeping a small wooden box with documents, photos, and police correspondence copies, the remnants of fragile hope that Tiffany and her son might still be alive somewhere. Meanwhile, California's criminal investigation system underwent many changes. Data storage shifted from paper to digital, but pre-1990 cases were only scanned as images without biometric updates. Tiffany's file thus remained a blurry image copy, with Sergeant David Cole's handwritten notes, now retired. In 2009, a minor detail occurred unnoticed. Chris Mann's DNA profile, Tiffany's estranged husband, was entered into CODIS after an administrative violation for unregistered firearm possession. The sample was collected under new statewide rules and automatically uploaded to the national database. No one in the system realized this sample belonged to someone linked to an old missing person case. File MB 81-723 remained in physical storage, never digitized. There was no automatic cross-referencing between pre-1995 unsolved disappearances and the new DNA database. Chris's information existed only as an anonymized identifier, unlinked to any case. Around the same time, Tiffany's parents passed away one after another. Her mother in 2008, her father 2 years later, never witnessing any progress. In their will, they left one wish: if the truth is ever found, please bury our ashes beside our daughter. The file was considered closed, with no direct relatives filing complaints and no one at the department remembering. Young staff assigned to old file inventory sometimes flipped through yellowed documents, read the note missing since July 1981, then closed it again, continuing statistical work. To them, it was just a fragment in thousands of unresolved stories from the past. In San Diego, the Claremont Mesa neighborhood had also changed. The house where Tiffany once lived with her son changed hands multiple times. No one knew a young woman had disappeared from there. Memory of her existed only in a few old newspaper articles stored on microfilm at the city library. Occasionally, Criminology students researching mysterious 1980s California disappearances stumbled upon Tiffany May's name in the Unsolved Missing Persons Southern District list. But few paused to investigate. In the official investigation system, the case was just a number in annual statistics, an inconclusive file. 32 years had passed since Tiffany left the Claremont Mesa home. No one knew where she went, why she vanished, or what really happened that July night. Everything gradually sank into oblivion until a small policy change in reviewing old files by the San Diego Police Department in the early 2010s unexpectedly stirred what had seemed to sleep undisturbed for over 30 years. In 2013, as part of an effort to reform the handling of backlog cases, the San Diego Police Department established the Cold Case Unit under the Criminal Investigation Division. Lieutenant Jennifer Daly, then 42 years old, was appointed team leader responsible for unresolved missing women cases from 1975-1985. A period when forensic testing technology was limited and many files were abandoned due to lack of evidence. Daly's task was to review each case individually, identifying files with potential for recovering biological data for DNA analysis. In late March of that year, as the review team began transferring file boxes from the National City storage to the central office, an old file at the bottom shelf caught her attention. On the brown cover, slanted handwriting in blue ink, read MB 81 723. Tiffany Mee, missing adult, suspicious circumstances. The stamped red text, preserve evidence, do not discard in the right corner, made Daly pause longer than usual. She opened the file, flipped through Sergeant David Cole's handwritten reports, then reached the evidence inventory, clothing sample, 1 vehicle photographs, 6 biological trace, sealed glass vial. Compared to many disappearances from the same era, this file was rare in retaining testable biological evidence. Most 1980s cases had only paperwork and black and white photos. Evidence was often destroyed due to storage limits. The Tiffany Mee file remained intact, sealed in aluminum box #24, with seal signed D. Cole, 1981. The careful preservation was likely due to the former sergeant's renowned meticulousness, who had noted in an internal log that evidence may be important later. Daly decided to prioritize this file. In the unit meeting minutes, she presented her selection rationale: file has suspicious elements, evidence preserved, high potential for modern DNA testing. The proposal was approved along with 4 others in the potential for forensic testing group. The following week, she and unit forensic technician Michael Grant examined the evidence. Upon opening the aluminum box, they found 3 sealed envelopes, one containing fabric with dried bloodstains, a small glass vial with an unidentified biological sample, and 6 photos of the Ford Pinto. Grant noted the preservation condition as surprisingly good, seals intact. Only signatures faded. Daly requested an unsealing report, photography, and small samples sent to the California Department of Justice Forensic Lab in Sacramento. DNA testing of old cases often took time due to high volume, but the Tiffany Mee case was prioritized due to stable evidence condition. While awaiting response, Daly reread the entire original case file. It documented that Tiffany Mee, 22, hotel receptionist, disappeared on the evening of July 18, 1981, after leaving her Claremont Mesa home with her young son to meet her estranged husband, Chris Mann. Her Ford Pinto was found 2 days later on Morena Boulevard, with no signs of robbery or accident. The report also listed inconsistencies in Chris's statements, but due to lack of physical evidence, the case was closed at the end of 1981. Reading this, Daly noted in the margin, vial biological sample may be starting point. She compared the evidence list with 1981 forensic notes. A faint handwritten line from the 1981 technician read trace sample taken from inside vehicle, possible blood. No analysis was done because technology then could only determine blood type, not individual identity. Daly realized that if the sample was blood, modern DNA technology could yield comparison results, at least identifying whether it belonged to Tiffany, Chris, or someone else. This could change the entire file assessment. She immediately contacted the state DOJ to confirm old sample submission procedures and requested retrieval of Chris Mann's existing CODIS profile. However, data at the time showed no automatic link between old files and his 2009 entered DNA from an administrative violation. Daley requested manual comparison if new results showed the biological sample differed from Tiffany's. On June 18, 2013, the 3 evidence envelopes were sent to Sacramento, accompanied by an official letter signed Lieutenant Jennifer Daley, Cold Case Unit, San Diego PD. In an internal memo she wrote, "After 32 years, case MB 81-723 may provide the first answer if DNA testing succeeds." As she left the office that day, Daley knew most cold cases rarely yielded results, but over 20 years of investigative experience taught her that sometimes a tiny trace, forgotten in a dusty box, could be the key to unlocking the full truth. The Tiffany Mee case, to her, was one such instance. 4 months after the MB 81-723 evidence envelopes were sent to Sacramento, Lieutenant Jennifer Daley received an official notification from the California Department of Justice Forensic Lab. The 37-page forensic report, boldly titled Forensic DNA Analysis, Case MB 81-723, San Diego Police Department. Date performed, October 14, 2013. The first line of the results made Daley pause for a long time. DNA successfully recovered from 1981 archived biological sample. It was rare. After over 3 decades, the sealed blood and fabric samples still contained sufficient genetic material for analysis. The technical description stated, from the reddish-brown stained fabric, experts used modern extraction methods to isolate 2 distinct DNA types, one female, one male. The female sample was compared to a reference profile from a living relative of Tiffany Mee, specifically an aunt, who provided a blood sample at Daley's request. Results showed 99.998% match, confirming the female DNA was Tiffany Mee's. However, the critical discovery was in the second part. The male DNA fully matched the identifier CA 2009 C17684 in CODIS, the code belonging to Chris Mann, the victim's estranged husband, entered into the national database in 2009 due to an administrative weapons violation. The report stated, probability of random match with unrelated individual is less than 1 in 9.2 trillion. In other words, no doubt, Chris Mann was present at the scene where the evidence was collected. Daley reread the forensic expert's entire conclusion. 2 DNA samples, one male and one female, appear simultaneously on the same evidence surface. This combination could only occur if both individuals were present in a confined space at the same time. She closed the report, feeling as if the wall clock had stopped. After 32 years, a disappearance thought buried in oblivion now had the first evidence confirming direct connection between the victim and her estranged husband at the location where the car was found. Daley immediately called technician Michael Grant to review the report details. They spread out the accompanying technical images, magnified photos of the fabric with 2 color-coded DNA strands, marked in blue and red. Grant pointed to a margin note, sample source from lower door edge, inside dashboard panel, 45 centimeters from driver's seat. That location was significant. It could not be mixed blood from casual surface contact. There had to be impact or injury causing blood to adhere to the interior lining. It can't be coincidence, Daley remarked. Grant nodded, confirming the 1981 technician noted possible blood transfer, but they couldn't separate it then. Now we know it contains both individuals' DNA. After thorough review, Daley drafted a summary report to the criminal investigation chief with a proposal to reopen the file. In the assessment section, she wrote, 2013 testing proves simultaneous presence of Tiffany Mee and Chris Mann in the vehicle linked to the disappearance. This is the first physical evidence confirming contact between the two at or near the time of vanishing. The report was submitted to command on October 21. 3 days later, An emergency meeting was held at San Diego PD headquarters, attended by cold case investigators, district prosecutor representatives, and forensics. Daly presented the evidence recovery process, analysis results, and 1981 case context in detail. Most in the room were surprised. Many had never heard of Tiffany Mee. She projected scene photos, described the Ford Pinto discovery location, then displayed a map of the Miramar Boulevard area where the blood trace was found. At the meeting's end, the chief district prosecutor stated briefly, the DNA evidence is sufficient grounds to reclassify the case from missing person to criminal homicide investigation. That same day, file MB 81-723 was officially updated in the system from missing adult, suspicious to homicide cold case reopened. Daly directed the tech team to back up all testing results and reseal post-analysis samples. She knew every detail, no matter how small, could become pivotal when restarting the investigation. In the final report to the state DOJ, the conclusion was bolded. Presence of dual DNA profile indicates both individuals were in physical proximity during event leading to disappearance. That meant Tiffany and Chris were not just meeting that night as he claimed, but together inside the car at the moment of the incident. This truth overturned 3 decades of assessment. The disappearance was no longer random or voluntary departure. It involved direct action between the two. Daly looked out her office window as the sun dipped behind downtown San Diego buildings, picturing a young woman leaving home in 1981, carrying her child and vanishing. 3 decades of silence. Now a dried blood drop on old fabric had answered the first part of the question police once left hanging: who was the last person with Tiffany Mee? And the answer, though only cold DNA evidence, rang clear: Chris Mann. After the DNA results were confirmed, Lieutenant Jennifer Daly decided to re-examine the entire original scene file of the Tiffany Mee case to understand why critical details were overlooked in the 1981 investigation. She requested access to the original Miramar Boulevard photos where the Ford Pinto was found and contacted the San Diego PD archive to borrow the old negative film roll stored under photographic evidence, 1981 series. The photos, rescanned with digital equipment, appeared clearer under lab lighting. From the first frames, Daly noticed inconsistencies between the images and the scene report. The 1981 report described the car parked close to the right curb, facing south, driver's door closed, no signs of struggle. But in the photos, the driver's door was slightly ajar, and the seat was pushed unusually far back, not matching Tiffany's height of about 5'3". Daly asked the technician to remeasure proportions using geometry analysis software. Results showed the driver's seat adjusted nearly to the limit, suitable only for someone 5'11" or taller. She couldn't have been driving, she noted in her log. Additionally, on the inner door panel, light reflection in the photos revealed smudged fingerprint areas, apparently wiped but leaving uneven dust edges. The 1981 report made no mention of fingerprint collection, only noting briefly, no usable traces. This raised questions about whether the initial officers followed standard procedure. She located the original response team list and found 2 still alive, retired patrol officers, Frank Ruiz and Harold Jenkins. Daly met them for re-interviews. Ruiz, now over 70, clearly remembered the morning the car was found. He said they received a citizen call about a vehicle parked unmoving for 2 days. Upon arrival, everything seemed too clean. Ruiz said the car had no dust, tires not sunk, like it had just stopped. When Daly asked if anyone touched the door before photos, he paused, then replied, "We thought it was abandoned, so someone might have opened it to check before shooting." This detail was not in the report. Harold Jenkins, the scene photographer, confirmed that when he arrived, the driver's door was already ajar, unclear who opened it. He also recalled seeing fresh shoe prints near the car, but didn't document them, thinking they were from colleagues. When Daly showed him enlarged photos, Jenkins nodded, "Yes, that's what I meant. Those prints weren't ours. We wore Bates police boots. These had deep V-tread, like industrial work shoes." This matched Daly's initial suspicion about tire marks. In the road background photos, She spotted a diagonal tire skid to the left edge, not matching the Ford Pinto's tread pattern. Cross-referencing technical data, she identified it as belonging to a small truck or pickup, 15-inch tires. The 1981 report made no mention of this. In her notebook, Daly underlined, "Possible secondary vehicle at scene, not documented." From there, she created a comparison table between original photos and old report descriptions, marking discrepancies. 1. Driver's seat position. Report stated normal position. Photos show seat fully reclined. 2. Car door. Report stated closed. Photos show ajar, 5-6 inches. 3. Fingerprints. Report silent. Photos show abnormal smudged areas. 4. Second tire mark, not recorded. 5. Unknown shoe print, visible in photos, but not cataloged as evidence. These discrepancies led Daly to conclude that the scene had not been properly preserved and may have been tampered with before the first unit arrived. She wrote in the internal report, "High probability the scene was no longer in original condition by the time police documented it. Signs of tampering include altered driver's seat position, open door, and tire marks not belonging to the victim's vehicle." To reinforce her assessment, Daly requested the technical department to fully digitize all 18 original photos and enhance contrast. Spectroscopic software analysis revealed a small arc-shaped bright streak on the door handle, suggesting possible wiping with a damp cloth or solvent. This indicated someone had attempted to erase fingerprints after opening the door. Combined with the DNA results, this further supported the hypothesis that the person was directly involved with the victim. In a brief cold case unit meeting, Daly presented the new findings to the technicians. "If the scene was tampered with," she said, "the only person with reason to do so is someone wanting to hide what happened inside the car." Grant nodded, pointing to the enlarged tire mark photo, small truck or pickup, possibly light-colored. Tire type common in civilianized military utility vehicles. The word military made Daly pause. Chris Mann had served in the Marine Corps stationed at Miramar, which used exactly this type of vehicle for personal transport. She noted in her log, "Potential vehicle type match, need to verify subject's registered vehicles." At the end of the review session, Daly sat alone in the room, facing two large printed photos, one of the Ford Pinto on the roadside and one of the second tire mark crossing beside it. She knew these faded old images were telling a story that no one in 1981 had listened to. The scene was not as quiet as assumed. Someone had returned, opened the door, wiped it down, then left, leaving a different tire track and half-erased fingerprints, silent but undeniable traces. Her preliminary report to the investigation chief concluded briefly, "Evidence suggests scene tampering prior to law enforcement arrival. Reclassification recommended, probable foul play." After determining the 1981 scene showed signs of tampering, Lieutenant Jennifer Daly shifted focus to retrieving Chris Mann's full military records, a former Marine stationed at Miramar. She sent an official request to the Western Pacific Naval Command for copies of his personnel file, duty logs, and medical reports from 1981. A week later, a file over 200 pages thick arrived at the cold case unit, stamped declassified, internal use only. Flipping through the first pages, Daly immediately noticed a standout detail in the time card. Chris Mann was listed as personal leave from July 16 to July 20, 1981. The exact period of Tiffany's disappearance. This contradicted his initial 1981 statement that the evening meeting with Tiffany was after hours, but not on leave. A handwritten unit commander note even added, "Approved 5-day leave to resolve family issues." To Daly, this was no longer coincidence. She highlighted it in red and wrote, "Likely intentionally scheduled leave to meet Tiffany." Next, in Chris's medical file, Daly found a treatment report dated July 22, 1981, from Balboa Naval Medical Center. The attending physician noted, 1.2 centimeters, laceration on back of right hand, tissue healing, patient claims scraped while changing tire. That date was just 2 days after police found Tiffany's Ford Pinto. Cross-referencing the 1981 interrogation report, Daly saw Chris had mentioned scratching his hand while helping Tiffany fix the car. However, the scene report showed no damage or tire change on Tiffany's vehicle. Both details, leave and injury, linked suspiciously. Daly handed the file to technician Michael Grant, requesting re-examination of the fabric blood trace for tissue correlation. Grant confirmed, male DNA from blood shows signs consistent with minor open wound, not large blood volume, as in severe injury. In other words, the man in the car at the time had only a scrape or scratch, perfectly matching Chris's medical description. In a cold case unit internal meeting, Daly presented the findings to the team. She projected military documents on screen, pointing out leave dates and medical notes. Everything points to the same time frame, she said. July 16th to 20. Tiffany disappears on the 18th. Chris's medical report on the 22nd, and the scene shows tampering, likely he returned afterward to erase traces. No one in the room objected. Each small detail from driver's seat position, strange tire marks, to hand injury, began forming a unified picture. The team agreed to re-evaluate Chris Mann's status, upgrading from person of interest to official suspect. Immediately after the meeting, Daly sent a supplemental verification request to Naval Criminal Investigative Service to review Chris's service activities for any disciplinary complaints or unusual behavior reports. NCIS responded that in summer 1981, Chris had a minor commander note for unauthorized absence from base during night duty, handled internally, not in official records. Comparing dates, Daly saw it occurred just 1 week before leave. This further supported the theory that Chris had planned the meeting with Tiffany in advance. From there, she compiled all related evidence, DNA report, scene photos, military medical file, and leave records. A detailed timeline was reconstructed, July 15, 1981. Chris submits leave request, 7/16, approved to leave base, 7/18. Tiffany leaves home to meet husband, then disappears. 7/20, Ford Pinto, abandoned. 7/22, Chris reports hand scratch, treated at Balboa. 7/23, police begin scene investigation. This closed chain showed Chris had time, opportunity, and motive for direct involvement in the disappearance. In a memo to the investigation chief, Daly wrote, "Objective data proves subject was at scene with injury matching evidence trace. Recommend upgrading case to criminal investigation with suspect Chris Mann." The report was quickly forwarded to the San Diego District Attorney's Office for re-prosecution review. The chief prosecutor, after reviewing DNA results and military records, commented briefly, "If this were a new case, an arrest warrant would be signed today." However, due to the long passage of time, they needed additional supporting evidence to ensure legal validity of reopening. Still, for Daly, this step was decisive. After over 30 years, Tiffany's disappearance finally had a clear direction. She knew much remained, verifying Chris's vehicle, reconstructing travel routes, and checking for accomplices. But most importantly, she now had what San Diego police lacked for 3 decades, a unified chain of evidence tying the suspect to the moment Tiffany vanished. At day's end, Daly closed the file, adding to the new cover page, "Reopened 2013. Primary suspect, Chris Mann." Under the desk lamp, her handwriting slanted slightly, clear, like a belated confirmation of a truth buried for 32 years. After Chris Mann was officially designated a suspect, Lieutenant Jennifer Daly moved to the surveillance and new evidence collection phase. Per residence records, Chris left California in 1986 after discharge and moved to Tucson, Arizona, where he now lived with his second wife, Linda Parker, an accountant at a construction materials company. For over 20 years, Chris lived quietly, with no criminal record, only the 2009 administrative citation for unregistered firearm possession, the event that entered his DNA into CODIS. With support from the San Diego District Attorney's Office, Daley contacted Tucson Police Department and requested coordinated suspect surveillance under Interstate Federal Investigation Framework. TPD agreed, assigning 2 local detectives, James Latham and Rebecca Ortiz, to the monitoring team. In November 2013, the investigation team planned non-intrusive observation to document daily habits and legally obtain biological samples from the suspect. Chris, then 57, worked as a warehouse manager, driving a silver Toyota Tacoma pickup to work each morning and returning to a quiet North Tucson residential area in the evening. Officers described him as calm, minimally interactive with neighbors, leaving home only for work or shopping. Over 3 weeks of surveillance, there were no signs he suspected being watched. In early December, the team moved to Phase 2, collecting confirmatory DNA to match the 1981 evidence. Without an arrest warrant, direct testing was impossible, so they used trash pull, collecting biological samples from publicly discarded household waste, legal under Arizona law. On the night of December 5th, Detective Ortiz and a TPD forensic technician waited until the garbage truck passed, then retrieved the Mann family's trash bags from the curb. The bags were sealed and transferred to the Tucson Crime Lab. Among items, technicians found 2 used paper cups with lip prints and an old toothbrush. Epithelial cells were extracted and sent to a federal lab, coordinating with the California DOJ. Comparison results arrived at San Diego PD on December 19, 2013. DNA recovered from sample matches profile CODIS IDCA 2009 C17684, confirmed identical to blood trace recovered from 1981 vehicle. The report was only 4 lines long, but for Daley, it was the final confirmation she needed. Current trash DNA perfectly matched the male DNA at Tiffany Me's 1981 scene, meaning no doubt, Chris Mann was the person who left the trace in the Ford Pinto. That same day, Daley held an emergency secure line meeting with the district prosecutor, TPD representatives, and the 2 surveillance detectives. She presented the evidence chain, 1 DNA match, 2 military records confirming leave during disappearance, 3 hand injury matching blood trace, and 4 tampered scene with tire marks consistent with his vehicle. The prosecutor assessed, "We have sufficient probable cause for an arrest warrant." A joint task force was formed, named Operation Claremont after Tiffany's residential area. The immediate task was finalizing the file and preparing an interstate federal arrest warrant. While awaiting approval, the team maintained tight surveillance on Chris Mann to prevent flight risk. Daily reports showed he kept a regular routine, leaving home at 6 a.m., returning at 5 p.m., occasionally dining with his wife at a small downtown Tucson restaurant. No signs he noticed the tail. Daley repeatedly reminded the Tucson team via secure line, "We've waited over 30 years, don't let it collapse over one small mistake." As the arrest warrant entered final approval, Lieutenant Jennifer Daley continued reviewing Chris Mann's past residences, aiming to identify possible locations for holding or disposing of the victim. In the personnel file from Marine Corps Command, the 1981 leave residence address was listed: temporary residence, parental home, 1427 Applewood Drive, El Cajon, San Diego County. This was the home his parents lived in before passing in the late 1990s. The property was later sold and still existed at the same address. Reading this, Daley felt a strong urge. In all documents, no one had ever mentioned searching this location. In 1981, the investigation focused around Morena Boulevard, where the car was found, and Claremont Mesa, where Tiffany left home. No record showed police ever went to El Cajon. She immediately requested the county recorder's office for property maps and ownership records over the years. The Applewood Drive house sat on the eastern edge of El Cajon, about 30 kilometers from downtown San Diego, on over half an acre, with an empty lot behind that was once a small farm. Per records, the backyard was filled in 1982 to install new irrigation system, but no detailed engineering drawings existed. This caught Daley's attention, The fill occurred just months after Tiffany's disappearance. She contacted the current owners, explained the investigation, and requested permission for non-invasive ground-penetrating radar inspection. The owners, an elderly couple, were cooperative and said they had kept most of the backyard as purchased, only adding a few lemon trees. On January 8, 2014, the San Diego PD forensic team coordinated with San Diego State University's GPR unit at the scene. They set up an 8-line parallel scan grid, 1 meter apart, covering the entire backyard. The scanner screen displayed subsurface reflection waves. Most images were stable, showing natural structure, except for a roughly 3 square meter area near the southwest corner, where reflections were dense and abnormally shaped. The technician pointed to the screen. This soil is compacted with artificial sediment layer, depth about 1.5 meters. Daly requested 2 RESCAN confirmations, results unchanged. The preliminary report stated, anomaly detected, possible subsurface disturbance. That very afternoon, she obtained an expanded search warrant from the county court, citing the GPR results and the address's connection to the suspect. The warrant was approved within hours. The next morning, the forensic team returned to El Cajon with prosecutors and 2 investigators. A 5 square meter area was cordoned off with yellow tape, cameras recording the entire process. The topsoil was gently removed with shovels and brushes. After about 40 minutes, a technician called out, "Soil structure change here." The color shifted to grayish-brown, finer than surroundings, indicating it had been dug and refilled. They dug another half-meter deeper and uncovered a hard ivory-white object protruding from the soil. The area fell silent. The technician brushed lightly, revealing the distinctive curve of human bone, possibly a forearm. Daly approached, signaling to halt work for photography and precise coordinate measurement. Over the next 3 hours, the forensic team gradually exposed more bone fragments, arranged in the shape of a small body, lying on its side, head facing west. Clothing was almost completely decomposed, only a few rotted fabric scraps remaining, but on the right wrist was a relatively intact thick olive green fiber piece. The technician immediately recognized it as military canvas material, similar to early 1980s Marine Corps field jacket fabric. Beside the arm bone was a small metal button engraved U.S. and a 1979 production mark. Daly leaned in to observe, feeling a chilling connection between this evidence and the man they were monitoring in Tucson. She ordered expansion of the excavation 1 meter eastward. At about 1.8 meters deep, they found pale fabric scraps, a broken zipper section, and a curved plastic piece, possibly from a child's toy. No one spoke. An investigator quietly retrieved evidence bags, sealing each item. The bones were collected, numbered, and transferred to the San Diego Forensic Lab for examination. Before leaving the scene, Daly looked back at the yard, now just a deep hole in the middle, afternoon sunlight slanting through, casting long shadows on the old brick wall. The California Department of Justice Forensic Lab received the bones and evidence from El Cajon on January 10, 2014. Lieutenant Jennifer Daly closely monitored the examination progress, knowing these results would determine the case's nature. The remains were sequentially numbered, is C-14, A1, South Carolina, 14, A2, and sent to the Forensic Anthropology Lab in Sacramento. Experts began by reconstructing the skeleton and determining sex, age, and cause of death. Within 2 weeks, the preliminary report to San Diego PD stated pelvic, cranial, and long bone structure consistent with adult female, age approximately 22-28. This matched Tiffany Mee's age at disappearance in 1981. She was 22. Examiners noted several key features: arm and thigh bones well preserved, no antemortem trauma, but the neck area showed severe damage. In the description, they wrote, hyoid bone, fractured across body, fracture not due to natural decomposition, but direct strong compressive force. Such marks typically appear in ligature or manual strangulation cases. No bullet wounds or skull fractures were found. From this, the lab preliminarily concluded, cause of death, consistent with strangulation. Simultaneously, the DNA team extracted genetic material from femoral marrow and molars. As the remains had been buried over 30 years, samples were severely degraded, but using new multi-locus PCR, they recovered 16 of 20 necessary genetic markers. The comparison sample came from Tiffany Mee's aunt, who had provided DNA for the 2013 testing. Upon completion, the report concluded, genetic similarity between bone sample SC14 and reference sample is 99.9997%. Conclusion, remains belong to Tiffany Mee. On January 29, 2014, Daly received a direct call from the lab. Results fully match. We have confirmed identity. She was silent for a few seconds, then replied, "Thank you. Send the full hard copy and digital data to San Diego today." Hanging up, she looked at the old photo on her desk, the one she had kept in front since reopening the case. Tiffany smiling in her hotel uniform, calm eyes. After over 30 years, that girl finally had her name called again. No longer missing person in storage. The full DOJ report arrived 2 days later. 48 pages. The first line in bold. Identity confirmed. Tiffany Mee, female, Caucasian, age 22 at time of death. The most critical section was cause of death. Experts determined the hyoid fractured at 2 points, with cervical vertebrae 3 and 4 showing minor friction scratches, classic ligature or soft object strangulation signs. They noted no defensive hand marks, indicating victim restrained prior to death. Combined with burial timing, surrounding soil showed decomposition starting in summer. The team confirmed a death between July 18 and 22, 1981. Exactly when Tiffany vanished. Daly held an internal meeting that evening. On the table, she placed the DNA results printout and neck bone reconstruction photos. "We're no longer talking about a disappearance," she said slowly. "This is homicide, occurring at the exact time she vanished, and the clearest motive points to Chris Mann." Everyone understood the discovery's meaning. A 32-year-old case now had an identified victim, verified cause of death, and specific suspect. Police had legal grounds to upgrade to murder investigation. To ensure legal process, Daly requested additional testing, comparing the olive fabric found at the scene with contemporaneous Marine uniforms. The evidence lab results showed the fiber head weave structure and dye characteristic of M65 field jackets, produced by the U.S. military's main contractor in 1979-1980. A separate note stated, "Remaining fiber contains red soil particles consistent with samples from Miramar base vehicle bays." Though not absolute, this added another link between suspect and victim. On February 1st, Daly presented all results to the San Diego District Attorney's Office. The nearly 2-hour meeting summarized the entire chain from Pinto DNA, tire and wiped prints, to El Cajon exhumation. The prosecutor concluded, based on forensic results, victim Tiffany Mee was murdered by strangulation, highly likely between July 18, 1981. Recommend classifying as first-degree murder. After the meeting, Daly returned to her office. She opened file MB 81-723, the missing adult, suspicious circumstances line crossed out in red ink. On the new label, she handwritten, homicide investigation, victim Tiffany Mee. Then she gently placed the victim's photo atop the file, whispering to herself, "You've been found, Tiffany." Outside, San Diego night was quiet. On the freeway, car lights streaked long in thin fog. In the still-lit cold case unit office, Daly sat alone, staring at the final bold line in the report, cause of death, ligature strangulation, manner of death, homicide. She understood those dry words, though cold, ended 32 years of ambiguity and silence. The truth finally had form, and for the first time since 1981, Tiffany Mee's name was recorded not in missing lists, but in the files of justice. On the morning of February 4, 2014, The federal arrest warrant for Christopher Mann was officially activated after bone examination confirmed Tiffany Mee's identity. In Tucson, the joint San Diego PD, Tucson Police and FBI team deployed at 5 a.m. Jennifer Daly flew from San Diego the previous night, present at the scene to observe and ensure legal procedures. Per plan, Chris would be arrested leaving home for work, least resistance, minimal neighborhood attention. At 6:20 a.m., Chris's Toyota Tacoma started. 2 unmarked police cars immediately followed, another unit blocking the intersection ahead. As he stopped at a red light on Oracle Road, police lights activated. Before he could react, 2 agents approached, ordering him out. He was quickly subdued, handcuffed, and read Miranda rights on sight. His face showed shock, but no resistance. His first words, per report, "I don't understand what's happening." Daly stood a few meters away, watching the moment she had awaited over 3 years on this file. Tucson police searched the vehicle under approved warrant. In the glove box, they found an old envelope with 3 faded Kodak photos of Tiffany Mee from the early 1980s. One at La Jolla Park, one at Mission Bay Beach, one with Chris in Marine uniform. In his wallet, besides driver's license and insurance card, was an old military ID matching 1981 records, and a small folded paper with 1427 Applewood Drive, the address where Tiffany's remains were exhumed weeks earlier. All sealed on site, transferred to evidence bags. Chris's current wife, Linda Parker, was home when police returned with a search warrant. Per her statement, Chris never mentioned his ex-wife in years, only saying she left long ago. Seeing the warrant, she was incredulous. "I've lived with him over 20 years, never saw anything unusual." The home search lasted 4 hours. In the office, officers found a small wooden box with 1980s personal papers, Tiffany's old ID card, an undated handwritten letter, and a receipt for 3 8-inch rope from a San Diego hardware store. Rope type consistent with ligature strangulation hypothesis. At TPD headquarters, Chris underwent preliminary federal agent interrogation. He claimed no knowledge of the case and hadn't returned to California since 1982. When confronted with his hand injury and military medical records, he said it was just a minor accident. However, when faced with remains found at his parents' home, he fell silent, saying only, "I want a lawyer." The interrogation ended in under 2 hours. That afternoon, Daly held a closed press conference at San Diego PD, confirming arrest of suspect Christopher Mann, 57, former Marine, Tucson resident, on charges related to Tiffany Mee's 1981 death. The media release stated briefly, "Physical evidence, DNA analysis, and El Cajon remains exhumation provided legal basis for prosecution." Tiffany's name appeared in headlines after over 30 years, this time tied to justice. On February 6, Chris Mann was extradited to California via a U.S. Marshals Service flight. Upon landing at San Diego International Airport, he was immediately transferred to county detention. Daly observed through the cabin glass, noting the suspect's unusually calm face, cold eyes showing neither fear nor remorse. She recognized it as the expression common in those who had lived too long with their own secrets. That afternoon, at San Diego PD headquarters, recovered evidence was handed to the evidence unit, 3 Kodak photos, old military ID, personal papers, and the rope purchase receipt. The technician cataloged evidence capable of proving connection between suspect and victim in July 1981 timeframe. Signing the sealing report, Daly felt the weight of each line. Every item, no matter how small, was a remnant of a story once thought closed forever. That evening, news of the arrest spread across local TV stations. Cold case from 1981 reopened. Suspect arrested in Arizona. In the broadcast, images showed the El Cajon house with white tarps over the backyard, followed by a youthful photo of Tiffany Mee. The anchor said, "After over 3 decades, justice seems to have returned to San Diego." In the cold case unit office, Jennifer Daly sat alone before the case board, beside a cold coffee cup. She knew this was only the start of the hardest phase, bringing the case to trial and having the truth recognized in court. But that night, at least, she allowed herself to believe Tiffany had finally been found, not just through DNA results or reports, but by the man who made her vanish, now being led handcuffed into a cell. 3 days after extradition to San Diego, Christopher Mann was formally interrogated in the city police interrogation room, with court-appointed counsel present. Lieutenant Jennifer Daly sat opposite, with another investigator taking notes. The room was heavy with silence, broken only by the recorder and ceiling fan's steady hum. Daly began by presenting charges, DNA evidence, El Cajon remains discovery, and the link between his injury and 1981 vehicle blood. Chris sat straight, hands clasped, voice hoarse but clear. I didn't kill her. It was an accident. When asked to explain, he said that on the night of July 18, 1981, Tiffany drove to meet him in Loyola to discuss divorce. We argued in the car. She blamed me for not caring for the child, and I lost control. I grabbed her shoulders. She fought back, then suddenly went limp. I panicked. When Daly asked what specifically caused Tiffany to lose consciousness, Chris paused, then said, I don't remember. Maybe I squeezed too hard, but I didn't mean to kill her. He claimed that after a few minutes, realizing Tiffany was unresponsive, he carried her from the car, laid the seat down, and tried to revive her, but it was too late. Daly listened without interrupting. When Chris finished, she opened the file, sliding toward him, an El Cajon excavation photo, with the victim's neck bones marked in red. You said you only grabbed her shoulders, she said slowly. But her hyoid was fractured in 2 places. Forensics confirmed strangulation, with a soft ligature under tension, not from a fall or impact. Chris looked down, hands clenching. I didn't use a rope, he said. I just held her, kept her when she tried to leave. Daly continued, tone even. What about your son? You said you met in the car. She came with the child. When the car was found, no child traces. How do you explain? Chris avoided eye contact, replying, she left the boy with her mother, before coming. I never saw him that night. The answer made Daly frown. In the original file, Tiffany's family statements confirmed she took the child when leaving home. She moved to DNA. Do you know why we found your blood in the car? Chris said it might be from scratching his hand, helping Tiffany close the door. Daly placed the forensic report copy before him, pointing to the line, mixture of male and female blood, identified on inner door panel, consistent with active bleeding event. This blood volume isn't from a minor scratch. It's mixed blood on the lower door panel, position matching a driver's hand pressed against it. Chris did not respond. Comparing his statement to the 1981 report, contradictions emerged clearly. That year, Chris claimed he met Tiffany for about 15 minutes, and she left safely. Now, he described an argument leading to unconsciousness. Daly emphasized, you lied to police from the start. Chris closed his eyes, sighing, I was scared. If I told the truth, they wouldn't believe me. I was military, known for a temper. I didn't want prosecution for an accident. Daly opened the next file, NCIS 1981 leave report. You requested 5 days off, coinciding with Tiffany's disappearance, then returned to base with a right-hand injury. Medical report says, minor laceration from changing tire, but Tiffany's car had no flat. Explain? Chris looked at her, silent a long while, then softly, I scratched myself burying her. The statement silenced the room. In the new account, Chris said, after realizing Tiffany was dead, he drove her car to a vacant lot near Miramar Boulevard, planning to abandon it to stage her departure. Then he went to El Cajon, where his parents were, and dug a small backyard hole. I didn't know what else to do, he said, voice low. I thought, if they didn't find her, I'd have time to figure an explanation. Asked why he kept Tiffany's personal items at home, he replied, I kept her photos because I didn't want to forget. However, when asked if anyone helped or knew, Chris denied completely. No one knew, I did it alone. Daly pressed, then why the second tire mark on the car? He frowned slightly, saying, maybe someone parked nearby later. The answer made investigators exchange glances, a vague denial without basis. After 3 hours, Daly ended the interrogation. In the report, she wrote, "Suspect admits victim died during altercation, admits concealing body and staging scene, but continues denying intent to kill. Contradictions between statement and forensic evidence indicate deliberate concealment of crime." When reading and signing, Chris said briefly, "I've lived with this over 30 years. Now it's over." That afternoon, Daly met the prosecutor to discuss charges. She presented the recording and full statement, emphasizing that despite Chris claiming accident, strangulation marks, and disposal showed clear criminal awareness. The prosecutor nodded. He confessed the key part, concealment and burial. "We'll charge second-degree murder, at minimum." Daly nodded, looking out the window where afternoon light reddened the city. 32 years ago, a young woman named Tiffany vanished into darkness. Now the man who silenced her had finally spoken, though still clinging to fragile self-justification. But the cold physical evidence, fractured bones, blood traces, and the backyard hole, told the rest of the story he could not deny. In the 3 weeks after Chris Mann's formal arrest, the entire San Diego PD cold case unit mobilized for prosecution file preparation. District Prosecutor Richard Larson, with over 20 years handling unidentified body homicides, was assigned lead prosecutor. Lieutenant Jennifer Daly became the key investigative witness, responsible for compiling all data from the 2-year Tiffany Me reinvestigation. They worked nearly daily in the 7th floor court records room at San Diego County Courthouse, where stacks of old files, recordings, and forensic images were reorganized into a logical timeline. The prosecution file was divided into 5 main sections: 1 physical evidence, 2 scientific evidence, 3 statements and original 1981 investigation reports, 4 confession and current contradictions, and 5 supplemental circumstantial evidence. In the first section, Daly and Larson gathered all Morena Boulevard scene photos, El Cajon area maps, and excavation records. The 6 Ford Pinto photos were enlarged, with diagrams marking the mixed DNA blood location. The second section included California DOJ forensic reports, victim and suspect DNA identification, military fabric comparison, and hyoid examination. Each document had expert certification and electronic signature copies. The third section comprised 1981 original recordings and reports. Daly carefully selected pages showing clear initial contradictions in Chris's statements. In the first interrogation, he claimed Tiffany left safely, while the 2014 statement described she passed out during argument. Placed side by side, these became key evidence of deliberate concealment. Larson added Chris's leave report, hand injury, and military records confirming his San Diego presence at disappearance time. In the fourth section, the prosecution presented Chris's full updated statement, recorded and certified transcribed, with Daly's conclusion. Suspect admits causing death during altercation, burying victim, and staging scene. Larson refined language for court, emphasizing concealment and evidence destruction prove post-act criminal awareness, element of second-degree murder. In circumstantial evidence, the team gathered related statements: Tiffany's mother, neighbor, Louise Franklin, the last to see her, and former officers, Ruiz and Jenkins, admitting the 1981 scene may have been disturbed. Larson believed these would help the jury understand the event chain and confirm the initial investigation missed criminal elements. On March 18, 2014, the official file was completed. Over 1,200 pages total, bound in 8 hardcover volumes. The cover title read, "The People of the State of California versus Christopher Mann. Case number 14 CR 2789. Charge, second-degree murder." In the accompanying summary brief, the charge was proposed as second-degree murder under California Penal Code Section 187, with elements: 1 unintentional killing, with conscious dangerous act; 2 deliberate concealment and evidence destruction, and 3 body burial duration, proving intent to evade law. Larson and Daly reviewed every detail to ensure no errors. They spent nearly a week rechecking DNA records for seamless evidence continuity from 1981 to 2013. Each item had a clear chain of custody log from Pinto collection, National City Storage, to retesting and new sample comparison. The chain of custody section spanned nearly 40 pages, which Larson called the backbone of the entire case. He said, "If we hold the chain, no defense attorney can break it." During review, Daly also prepared her court testimony. She summarized the reopening journey: intact seal discovery, DNA submission, match results, location excavation, and suspect confession. Larson advised calm delivery, avoiding personal judgment. "We don't tell a tragedy," he said. "We present facts. Let justice speak the rest." Finally, they selected 8 key physical exhibits for Court 1. Blood-stained fabric with Tiffany and Chris DNA. 2. DNA analysis report. 3. Military records confirming leave. 4. Medical report with hand injury. 5. Scene photos and unknown tire marks. 6. Location excavation map. 7. Remains forensic results. 8. Suspects' contradictory statements. On March 24th, the prosecution file was filed with San Diego County Court. In the accompanying motion, Larson wrote, "3 decades of silence cannot erase legal responsibility. Physical, scientific, and statement evidence prove Christopher Mann is directly responsible for Tiffany Mee's death." That same afternoon, Daly left the courthouse with a feeling both heavy and relieved. Over 30 years, that disappearance had transformed from a faded report in an iron cabinet into a complete criminal case with solid evidence. Signing the final copy, she paused at the line, "Charge, second-degree murder." It was the result of 2 years of persistent investigation and the closest step to bringing Tiffany out of the past shadows. In her personal notebook, she wrote a short line, "File completed, 33 years after disappearance. Evidence has spoken, now justice's turn." Below, she pasted a small photo of the old house in Claremont Mesa, where it all began. For Daly, the journey had reached a point no one dared believe possible. The Tiffany Mee case, once forgotten in old storage, had returned to the courtroom, not as a mystery, but as a real murder. The trial of Christopher Mann opened on the morning of May 12, 2014, at San Diego County Court, Courtroom 4, presided over by Judge Robert Keating. Local media called it the trial of 3 decades, as one of California's oldest cases brought to trial via DNA evidence. The prosecution was led by Richard Larson, representing the state, while the defense was Public Defender William Heller. In the gallery, the front row was for Tiffany Mee's family, only 2 distant relatives and a few old co-workers, silently watching the silver-haired gaunt man in a gray shirt, handcuffed, entering after over 30 years since Tiffany vanished. In the opening, Prosecutor Larson addressed the jury. "This is a case without eyewitnesses, but with truth preserved by science, matter, and time. A young woman was killed in 1981, the killer buried her in his parents' backyard, and lived peacefully for over 30 years, until DNA technology shattered that silence." He outlined the evidence chain: mixed blood in the Ford Pinto, DNA fully matching Chris Mann, leave coinciding with disappearance, and medical record of hand injury. The courtroom large screen displayed scene diagrams and enlarged fractured hyoid photos. Larson ended, "Tiffany Mee did not disappear. She was killed, and the evidence has led us to the man before you." Defense attorney Heller responded cautiously. He conceded DNA proved Chris's presence, but argued, "Presence does not equal murder." He said, "My client has stated clearly, it was an accident during an argument. The burial was wrong, but the act of a panicked man, not a premeditated killer." Heller stressed lack of direct witnesses, no audio or video, and 1981 police mishandling potentially distorting evidence. Over the first 2 weeks, the prosecution called 14 witnesses, including Lieutenant Jennifer Daly, forensic technician Michael Grant, former scene officers Frank Ruiz and Harold Jenkins, and a DOJ DNA expert. Daly was central. On the stand, she detailed the 2013 reopening, sealed evidence recovery, and DNA chain discovery. Her voice calm, each sentence illustrated with documents. When asked, "Lieutenant Daly, "Why do you believe Christopher Mann is responsible for Tiffany Mee's death?" She replied, "Because everything left from the blood drop, his injury, to her fractured bone, connects to one story only he could write." Heller's cross-examination focused on time and storage. He asked, "Can you absolutely confirm the DNA sample wasn't contaminated over 30 years? Grant replied briefly, "We verified chain of custody, 1981 seal, 2013 reopening, all documented. No contamination possible." When Heller suggested someone else could have bled in the car, Grant calmly said, "Impossible. That blood mixture is from only two people, the victim and defendant." A notable moment was former Officer Harold Jenkins' testimony, the 1981 scene photographer. Under oath, he admitted the scene may have been disturbed before arrival, but insisted no team member opened the door. Asked his thoughts now. Jenkins said, "We lacked tools and experience then. With today's DNA tech, this would have been solved long ago." The defense called Chris Mann in week 3. In a black suit, hands slightly trembling, his testimony repeated. Tiffany died accidentally in an argument. He detailed trying to revive her but failing, then panicking, and burying her in El Cajon. Heller asked, "Do you regret it?" Chris bowed his head. "For 30 years, I thought of her every day, but I didn't mean to kill her." Larson cross-examined, "If not intentional, why bury the body? Why lie to police for 30 years? Why wipe traces in the car?" Chris fell silent. The courtroom was quiet. In closing, Larson stood before the jury, voice firm. "Look at the evidence, not excuses. A man planned to meet his wife on leave. She vanished. He returned to base with a hand wound. His DNA in the car. Her body buried in his parents' yard. If an accident, why hide the body, lie and live, as if nothing happened? Because he knew he killed her." Heller countered, accusing prosecution of emotional manipulation and inference over evidence. He reminded the jury of no witnesses, no camera, no specific act description, only indirect links. "Don't let 30 years of silence become rush justice," he ended. After 3 weeks of arguments, the court closed evidence and handed the case to the 12-member jury. They were to weigh second-degree murder, if Chris acted consciously causing death, or manslaughter, if believing death unintentional. As jurors left, Daly sat in the back, staring at Tiffany's photo on the evidence table. 33 years, all evidence, statements, her and the team's effort now condensed into hours of deliberation. She didn't know the verdict, only that whatever the outcome, Tiffany had finally been heard, not by voice, but by truth proven over time. After 3 days of deliberation, at exactly 10 a.m. on June 6, 2014, the 12-member jury returned to courtroom 4 at San Diego County Court. Tension was so thick every sound echoed: court staff footsteps, the faint clink of defendant Christopher Mann's handcuffs as he was led in, and Judge Robert Keating's light pen tap on the desk as he called for rising. Prosecutor Larson silently bowed his head before the jury was polled. The foreperson, a middle-aged woman in a navy blazer, stood, holding a folded paper. Her voice calm but clear, "We, the jury in the People versus Christopher Mann, find the defendant guilty of second-degree murder." The courtroom fell silent. Chris Mann slightly bowed his head, lips pressed tight, eyes on the floor. No cries or outbursts, just heavy quiet, as if 30 years of past dropped at once. Larson exhaled, nodding lightly to Jennifer Daly, sitting in the prosecution row. She nodded back, eyes fixed on Tiffany Mee's photo on the evidence table. After over 3 decades, the truth had final confirmation. Judge Keating thanked the jury for thorough consideration and duty in a complex case with long history. He then recessed for 15 minutes before sentencing. During the break, Chris sat still, hands clenched, while Larson and the prosecution reviewed the proposed sentence. When court resumed, the judge read aloud, "Based on the jury verdict and presented evidence, defendant Christopher Mann is sentenced to 25 years imprisonment, no early parole eligibility. Incarceration begins June 6, 2014. In sentencing remarks, Judge Keating spent minutes on the case's meaning. "This case reminds us justice is not bound by time. A crime can be hidden 30 years, but when truth is proven, legal responsibility remains." The defendant chose silence, chose to bury the past, but California justice never sleeps. He paused, looking directly at Chris. You had 32 years of freedom others lost. Now you live with the consequences. Chris offered no defense or objection. Asked for final words, he said briefly. I did wrong, I can't go back. I only hope my son, wherever he is, won't bear my crime's burden. His voice hoarse, breaking at the end. A long silence followed before the judge declared, court adjourned. Case MB 81-723 officially closed. Court officers approached to lead Chris out. As he passed the prosecution row, Daly glanced, not with hatred, but the steady gaze of duty fulfilled. She felt no victory, only a deep sadness. This solved case still couldn't return. Tiffany Mee's life, the woman forgotten for 30 years. Outside court, local press waited. A San Diego Union Tribune reporter asked Larson his thoughts post-verdict. He said only, "No one wins in cases like this. We ensure justice is finally named correctly." Daly walked quietly, avoiding cameras. She didn't want spotlight for her. The one to remember was Tiffany. No one else. The next day, San Diego PD issued an official statement, File MB 81-723. Tiffany Mee disappearance, classified solved. Defendant Christopher Mann, sentenced to 25 years imprisonment, no early parole. Thanks to forensic units, special investigations, and California DOJ for support. The final line, case closed, justice served. In the basement records vault at San Diego PD headquarters, File MB 81-723 was labeled, resolved, and resealed in the cold case shelf. Beside hundreds of unsolved cases, Jennifer Daly personally signed the investigation completion report, then closed the cover. As the metal cabinet shut, the dry clang echoed, but for her, it was the sound of closure. 33 years after Tiffany vanished that night, justice finally had an answer. No more theories, no doubts, only a cold truth recorded. Victim, Tiffany Mee. Status, deceased. Offender, Christopher Mann. Conviction, second-degree murder. Sentence 25 years to life. A case once a faded line in 1980s storage had become proof of modern investigation's power and the persistence of those refusing time to obscure justice. In July 2014, 1 month after the sentence took effect, Lieutenant Jennifer Daly sat in the small cold case unit office at San Diego PD, finalizing the summary investigation report for MB 81-723, Tiffany Mee. The nearly 70-page document was required for submission to the District Attorney's Office and California DOJ Data Center as part of the DNA Solving Capability Evaluation Program. On the first page, Daly wrote case reopened January 2013, case closed June 2014. Outcome, conviction achieved. The short line encapsulated a journey spanning over 3 decades. The report began with a summary. In 1981, Tiffany Mee, 22, disappeared from Claremont Mesa residential area. No body, no witnesses, no verified evidence. Case suspended same year due to lack of leads. The next section detailed reopening. January 2013 under Cold Case Review Program, File MB 81-723 selected, due to well-preserved evidence condition. Daly then listed steps: blood sample recovery, DNA analysis, submission, CODIS National Database match with Christopher Mann's profile, and supplemental investigation leading to location excavation. A key section described modern DNA forensics applied. Daly cited California DOJ lab procedures using magnetic bead extraction and STR analysis to recover genetic sequence from over 30-year-old samples. Match probability, 1 in 3.2 trillion. This proved forensic technology could overcome time, turning seemingly useless traces into the most convincing conviction evidence. The second part addressed evidence management and chain of custody. Daly specified storage codes, 1981 sealing dates, investigator signatures, and 2013 resealing certification. She wrote, "No signs of alteration or loss. Storage at 4 degrees Celsius in Central Evidence Vault, ensured DNA integrity. This was critical for court acceptance of evidence legality. The third part evaluated supplemental investigation. Daley noted effective interagency coordination, California DOJ Forensics, Tucson PD, San Diego PD Criminalistics, and U.S. Military Legal Department. The report detailed Arizona suspect trash DNA collection, match, and arrest warrant. No step exceeded authority or violated Miranda procedures, Daley stated clearly. Next was suspect behavior analysis. She described Christopher Mann as typical of long-term body-concealing offenders. Emotional detachment, avoidance of past references, no genuine remorse until facing scientific evidence. Daley concluded, the suspect's silence was not forgetting, but belief time would bury the truth until technology proved otherwise. In the administrative conclusion, Daley recommended that case MB 81-723 be classified under the San Diego Police Department's cold case solved category. Noting the success level, full resolution, conviction achieved. Copies of the report were forwarded to the State Digital Data Archive and entered into the California Justice Data Repository, which compiles all cases successfully solved via DNA since 2000. The final archival code for the file read, "Closed solved via DNA reanalysis." On July 14, 2014, Daley signed the last page. She reread the closing statement she had written. Case MB 81-723 stands as proof of the enduring value of evidence and the duty of preservation. When humans err, science can correct. When justice is delayed, investigators must not let go. Truth, though buried for 3 decades, can still be found if we do not forget. The report was stored in the electronic database, marked with the final line, "Status closed, conviction achieved." San Diego PD Cold Case Division. As she turned off the computer screen, Daley looked at the black and white photo of Tiffany, clipped to the corner of her desk, the one found in the old wallet inside the Ford Pinto, years ago. No more courtroom lights, no more tense interrogations, only a closed file, quiet but complete. And in that silence, justice was finally documented, preserved as a reminder for future investigators. No case is truly cold, only people who stop believing the truth still exists. The story of the Tiffany Me case is not just a criminal file closed after over 3 decades, but a profound reflection of the value of justice, faith, and social responsibility in modern America. In 1981, when Tiffany disappeared in San Diego, police did what they could within the technological limits of the time. They had the Ford Pinto, a few blood traces, a husband with inconsistent statements, but no way to connect it all. The truth lay buried for 32 years, until Lieutenant Jennifer Daley and the cold case team used modern DNA technology to recover traces and bring the perpetrator to light. From this, the story reminds us that justice never expires, as long as people keep seeking it. The first lesson comes from persistence and integrity in the profession. Daley did not just solve a case, she represented those who believe every victim deserves to be heard, even if only as bones in an old file. In today's American society, where work pressure, politics, and time easily make people overlook what no longer matters, her story is a reminder that truth is always worth pursuing, no matter how long it takes. The second lesson concerns community trust in the legal system. The Tiffany Me case shows that science, specifically DNA, is not just a tool, but a bridge between justice and memory. It proves technological progress only matters when placed in the hands of the ethical and dedicated. In an increasingly diverse and complex America, this story encourages every citizen, from investigators, civilians, to lawmakers, to trust, cooperate, and be patient in the pursuit of truth, because justice, though late, can still bring healing to an entire community. If you believe justice never sleeps, and every truth deserves to be found, please subscribe to the channel to join us in continuing the journey of exploring cases forgotten by time. Thank you for following the story of Tiffany Me's disappearance. See you in the next video of the True Crime Cold Cases Awakened series.